Hey everyone, we'll be getting started in about a minute or two here. So if you want to hang tight, we'll be starting in just a second. Thanks. All right. Well, thank you everybody who's joining us on our quick 30. I don't know exactly which number this is. I think we're like 6 or 7 in right now, but we've gotten a lot of great feedback from reps throughout the country that have valued the content that we've been able to help provide here in these. My name is Stu. I'm from EverLast here, and I've got Alex Orr, the Vice President of Sales, who will be navigating us through today's Built For You process webinar. This has been one of the most requested webinars that we've got feedback from our reps for. So we're really excited to be able to do this. The thing that I think is really cool about today's presentation is that if you've worked with EverLast for a decade or 10 minutes, I think that there's going to be stories and some of the case studies that we're going to walk through that you're going to find that are going to be really, really valuable. And so we're really excited to kick this off today. There's a lot to go through here, so I'm going to hand it over to Al, and we're going to start there. So Al, tell us a little bit about what we're talking about today.
Thank you, Stu. So I just wanted to kind of go over a couple things. First and foremost, again, just to kind of reiterate what you said, this is a big suggestion from some of our manufacturers reps, and really what it boils down to is what are your capabilities? Everybody always hears us come and we do our lunch and learn presentations, we do our webinars, a lot of this other thing, a lot of the marketing content that you see us pump to you, and we say customization, we say solution-based manufacturing approach, and really what this boils down to is what are your capabilities? What are our capabilities as EverLast Lighting, and what do we bring to the table? This one particularly, we're focusing on the Built For You campaign, and you know, what does that really mean? So, two things, what does it really mean, and how do we get there? And the Built For You is really something we arrived at by identifying what our customer pain points are. And really quick, I guess before I even go into that, I just wanted to mention the chat window. Please feel free to use that at your leisure. We can see the questions. You're the only one that can see your questions. Don't feel like you can't ask anything. We are the only one that can see your individual questions, and we'll try to circle back as best as possible to each of your questions. For those of you that we can't get to your questions, we'll definitely be circling back with your regional manufacturer's territory manager. So again, how do we get there? What does Built For You really look like? We arrived at Built For You by identifying what our customer pain points are. So really, what does that look like? What is a pain point? We help expose the pain points by sitting down and listening to the customer and figuring out what makes them tick. What is it that is going to help us land this job? So a lot of the pain points that we arrived at by sitting down and listening to our customers was it emergency? Was it bird cages and wire guards? Was it optics? Was it some sort of control strategy? Was it a safety concern? What was it? And how do we get there? And what do those things actually mean to the customer? This presentation is going to be more about some of the technical information and what those emergency units look like and what bird cages and what applications we've actually used them in. But a lot of it's going to look like overall sales training that's going to help us identify and figure out in what ways do those things play a part in actually landing the sale.
Yeah, and Al, something we were talking about earlier, which was there's sometimes really common pain points that, maybe it's energy savings or maintenance costs that a lot of potential end users would know about. But then there's some uncommon ones. So I think today we'll be able to go through some of the common ones and some of the not so common ones and then show those in a real life example. Yeah,
so we actually highlight several different case studies in this particular presentation today. And obviously, there's a lot of pain points that are just kind of the given. What do we know our customers are going to say when we sit down with them? They're obviously going to say maintenance. A lot of them are going to say safety. Some of them are going to say energy, and then the others just standard run-of-the-mill things that everybody's looking for when they redo their lighting. Nobody wants to worry about lighting. They want to come in, flip a switch, have the lights turn on, and then be able to focus on other things. From a maintenance standpoint, the maintenance director doesn't want to focus on maintaining light fixtures. They want to focus on PM for machinery or other things that help make them money. For your heavy industrials, obviously safety is a major concern. But again, that is kind of a given that our fixtures are going to inherently take care of, and then energy savings obviously is another obvious one. And then you're going to, by sitting down and talking through these pain points and identifying them, you're going to allow the introduction of a lot of the one-off products. That customization, that solution-based manufacturing approach is going to kind of start to come through. Now, how some of this stuff happens is just as we uncover what the customer's pain points are, a lot of you reps don't know exactly what we're capable of. And all we have to do is just listen to the customer first and then figure out what's going to make them tick and what's going to send this job over the top.
Yeah, we use the word agile a lot, and I think that we'll be able to show some of those examples here in just a moment. But some of those things, I know one of the ones you had mentioned earlier, Al, was control strategy, and I know we're gonna dive into that in one of the case studies. But I think that's a pretty good example off the bat where you hear that in the early conversations that comes up. I mean, is that something you can talk to as an early pain point, but something that EverLast can help out with?
Sure, and I'll dive into that a little bit more as we get further here. But our control strategy is one that is agnostic, and that's not very common in the industry. However, the reason why we do it that way is because a lot of major manufacturers have a controls partner that they don't typically like to stray away from. A lot of these projects that we go into, they're retrofit projects with an existing control strategy. And because they're an existing control strategy, we like to have our fixture be able to adapt to any various control that there is out there. And we just create a partnership that way. It helps gain trust. You help develop and build the relationship. And at the end of the day, it makes life on the customer much easier because you don't have to worry about introducing an entire new scope of the project for the controls portion.
Yeah, and from a high level, I think that is maybe a pain point that someone may be dragging their feet to even have the conversation to talk about lighting because they know that they've got an integrated control system already in place, and so that's something that I think can be easily identified. Sure. We've kind of talked on a little bit of this already today, but why are pain points so important, and what have you experienced with the reps and the projects that you've been a part of on ways that you can overcome those and eventually, obviously, close more deals?
Well, first and foremost, end users don't know what they don't know. A lot of times they don't know that EverLast has custom capabilities, and they don't know that we're controls agnostic, or that we have 10 watt or 20 watt emergency backup systems, or full bird cages for various interior sports activities, things like that. A lot of the products that we make actually end up being a custom fixture that a rep at some point has said, hey, can you make an inverted sports lighting fixture that is going to provide indirect lighting? Well, of course we can. That's not that difficult for us. So again, not only do they not know what they don't know, but neither do you. And really what it boils down to is just asking the questions, hey, can you do this? And we will certainly look into it. And at the end of the day, as far as the other channels are concerned, the distributor channel and the end users, it really just helps develop those relationship pieces and builds trust. And eventually we get to that far left bubble up there, which is sell projects. Building the trust, developing those relationships, and providing a custom solution that is tailored directly to their application is what is going to end up selling the project for you.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive into the first project that we're going to highlight on, and that project is the US Steel. And so let's talk through some of the pain points that they have there. And I apologize, our formatting on the screen here, dropping some letters down, but yeah, I don't know, probably mine. So let's talk about some of that, Al. Talk about this project, and I know we hit on controls, but let's talk about a little bit more of that.
So some of you on this call or webinar rather are probably have played an integral role in landing this project. But US Steel was a pretty unique application and project. Mostly because you have your standard maintenance and you have your standard safety pain points, which you end up using those to your advantage in the end. But they were also looking for a single source manufacturer. They had, in terms of maintenance, they had identified some growing concerns with polycarbonates and acrylics. There was a lot of embers and things like that from cutting and welding materials, and they were actually embedding themselves into the light fixtures. So obviously there's cause for concern there. The solution to that particular problem or pain point for them was just introducing a glass optics package. Again, not that big of a deal, but we modified the inner reflector around the board itself, and we designed that in a way where it was going to actually create the same distribution pattern that the poly and acrylic offerings did, and the customer was happy because they didn't have to worry about the embedding materials and embers and things like that, and they didn't have any melting issues. And again, this is a small piece of glass. A lot of the other manufacturers are offering very large pieces of glass or reflectors that are actually made of glass. And as you can imagine, with overhead cranes and things like that, big giant glass reflectors can be a bit of a cause for concern.
Absolutely. Another thing that has been common that we hear a lot of is just having one manufacturer. So talk a little bit about that, because I know there were some unique things with the DC and the AC, as well as the high temp and non-high temp potential applications.
Sure. So something that was really important is they wanted one manufacturer that they were going to be able to kind of pick and choose between AC, DC, and high temp and non-high temp. So as you would imagine, US Steel being one of the largest steel manufacturers in the country, they had a ton of 65C applications. And they also had a fair amount of area where they were doing warehousing and things like that. They also had overhead cranes, which are still operating on DC voltage. It was important that they were going to be able to talk with one manufacturer that was going to be able to provide them all those solutions in both high temp and not DC and AC. So they used the DC on the cranes, both high temperature and non-high temperature units, but they wanted them to have the same aesthetic generally, and you can see those pictures, which the formatting didn't come through, so I apologize there. But both of those fixtures actually look very similar to one another, and you can't really tell the difference if they're not high temp or they are, or if they're AC or DC. That played a very significant advantage in this particular application because they had a pre-existing aesthetic that they wanted to match. The 30-inch aluminum reflector was going to maximize downlight, and they didn't have to worry about buying one fixture that had a really great price point and a really rock-solid warranty, and then turning around and working with another manufacturer on a high-temperature offering or a DC fixture.
Great. And I know that, and this isn't in this presentation, but I know we've also talked about the safety component for a company like US, the big company, company-wide initiative. Was there specific elements to this project that you saw that we were able to maybe adapt or do some different things to help with that concern? Yeah,
I mean, we really just built a more robust fixture, and what that looked like for them was including a braided 6-foot safety cable. And what you do is you use this opportunity to play a part in their commitment to safety. We didn't really do anything major. However, if they're really concerned about safety, you just stop and go, okay, what can I do? How do I make this sound? How do I make this look that this customer is going to believe and understand that we're going the extra mile to ensure the safety of this fixture. And when they go to the meeting and they present this to the board and these other groups, they can say, you know, EverLast is doing their part in our commitment to safety. And for them, they were super appreciative that we kind of jumped on that wagon with them.
So again, I think common point here, you know, one fixture family, multiple, voltage options available for the customer. But really the thing that hit home was just the one SKU that they could use across the board, one partner they can call. Even in my own house, it's confusing when you have like 50 booklets in your pull-out drawer that has all these warranty, and it's like, let alone when you have, lots of fixtures up in the project.
And that is just important, because not every customer that you go and talk to is going to know that we have a solution. They're not going to ask the question. It's up to us to offer those solutions. They're not necessarily a website, they haven't perused through our website. They might not be experts on our product. That's our jobs. And sometimes even our reps don't necessarily know that we have the solution for their particular application. And that's as simple as reaching out to your manufacturers, your local territory manager, either Cody, Brian, or Justin, and they can get you the answers that what you need immediately.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's hop into the next case study here, and that was with Harley Davidson. And this was a unique project. Understanding that Harley Davidson has a pretty fantastic brand, and they've got a lot of different revenue centers inside of their organization. Specifically, if where they sell their vehicles or sell their motorcycles at. And so I think this story to me really speaks to a lot of the more of EverLast agile ability. When it comes to looking at a project and not just saying, hey, here's the solution off the shelf, this is going to work in these different areas, but really kind of customizing that for specific areas inside of it. So, Al, we know that the Harley, the percentage of the retail sales of merchandise and things, make a large component to how they make their money at their individual locations. Let's start with, maybe highlight some of the different areas that we were able to create a solution for, and then let's kind of break that down into each specific area and what was unique about that project.
So there were three areas. One was the showroom floor. One was the showroom or sales floor. One was the assembly area, and the last was the warehouse. The solution that we introduced to them was our HL15D. So that's our 150 lumen per watt high lumen unit. And really what it boiled down to was providing them an optical package that was designed for each particular area. As you would imagine, there are optical needs or light distribution needs for each that is particular to each one of these applications or areas. And for example, the showroom floor, this is really cool to me because we don't often get to use our patented Kona optic, which in that picture, again, the formatting didn't come through, so I apologize about that, but you can see the uplighting cone there. That uplighting cone was really cool in this particular application because the customer saw some scalloping on the walls from the other samples that they had received, and frankly, their existing light fixture. There were chrome parts, clothing on display, and that type of thing, and what they were getting was a large U-shaped light distribution pattern on the wall that kind of took away from what they wanted their customers to look at. And that's just inherent because LED optics really aren't that great for most manufacturers. Sometimes people have forgotten about glare, but in particular applications, that minimizing that and creating optimal light distribution patterns is ideal. So we put the cone optic on that HL15D in white, and it really helps break up the light. That's an opaque unit. And it's going to create with a particular bottom lens and round ring adapter and the frosted acrylic reflector, it actually creates a little over 20% uplight. So they're going to get that industrial feel like you can see in that picture in the background, but it's going to get rid of that scalloping on the product that they were really concerned about.
Absolutely. And I think, this fixture you're seeing, the HL15D, this is the retailer package that you see there. The same fixture, just more geared and ready to go for a retail application with the nice white finish. The same fixture, though, we were able to use in the assembly area as well as the warehouse. Do you want to talk a little bit about how they wanted that same look and feel to push all the way through, but the needs were different?
Sure. So as far as the assembly area and the warehouse, we kept the white fixture housing, so they had the consistent look throughout. But the assembly area had much lower ceiling heights, and they needed more of like a wide bay distribution pattern. So we got rid of the cone optic because that wasn't necessary, and because they didn't need to maximize uplight that much in there just because of the lower mounting heights. So we kept that wide bay 16-inch lens on the bottom, and because it was about a 15-foot mounting height or so, we were still providing a little bit of uplight. But again, that acrylic, that frosted acrylic and that wide bay bottom lens broke up the light pattern really well and created a really nice wide distribution pattern that had really awesome coverage, but yet maintained that same fixture look from the showroom floor.
And probably played into some pain points that we just talked about, with safety and some other things, controls and things like that. Again, you're talking about one fixture. And then we also had the assembly area, right? So the warehouse. Yeah.
So the warehouse was a little bit different because it had a vertical racking system for product storage. There was a lot of high-low traffic. There was a problem with the vertical illumination in and on the rack spaces, so they weren't getting adequate lighting on the boxes, in the racks, and on the product packaging. And the solution there was that we provided fixtures with occupancy sensors, obviously for the additional energy savings. And that was one where we kind of drummed up a little bit of an extra pain point there and said, hey, why don't we introduce some sort of, basic entry-level controls here that's going to turn these things on and off when your high-low traffic is in and out. And then we also gave them the reflector and distribution pattern that they were looking for. And this combination was wide enough to illuminate the faces of the boxes, but narrow enough to maximize downlighting in those racking areas.
Absolutely. All right, so let's hop into the next case study here, where we're going to talk about Stryker Medical and Westbrook Outlet. This one there was a lot of pain points, but we'll speak about the controls at first here. So Al, do you want to kind of kick us off a little bit about what that project started out with? And this was a great story because it really does speak to a lot of EverLast's agile nature.
Sure. So, the highlight of this pain point really here is just flexibility. They were looking for a manufacturer that was controls agnostic, which again is pretty tough to find, that was simply willing to embrace the existing controls strategy that was already on site. So Stryker in particular, while I believe this was a new build, they had other sites that were already operating and buildings on site that were already operating on the Dolly platform. It is a Dolly-enabled facility. Some hate it, some love it. Regardless, it was the control strategy chosen for the location, and they were just looking for a manufacturer that had a really solid, stable light fixture that could accommodate it. We enabled all of our 500-watt, I believe there were 60,000 lumen plus units with those Dolly controls. And really, Stu, this is important because a lot of our manufacturers' reps don't look at being controls agnostic as an advantage, and it really is. We're not necessarily going to bring a controls platform to the table, but a lot of our manufacturers' reps actually rep control lines. And what we do is we actually send out our product to the controls manufacturer and do a simple compatibility testing, and they send some of their bolt-on items to our facility, and we do a testing here as well. And then we both kind of team up, come back together at a round table and say, yeah, this thing works great, it worked as intended, and we move on and move forward with the solution.
Yeah, again, it looks at every project, really speaking into the built for you. It looks at, we know that it's not always a one size fits all. And if we want to go above and beyond and create these incredible solutions for our customers, it takes the things like you had said with the testing, where they can send it here and our team works on, and engineers to make sure that we've got the right solution.
The same thing happened on the Westbrook Outlet site. That was an outdoor application, and the Westbrook had already chosen and was using NEDAP controls, which was a wireless node there that's partly covering the word outlets. And they'd already used that for the fixtures that they had on site. And the previous shoebox manufacturer fell short in some capacity. I don't know exactly what happened, and frankly, I didn't really ask. We just asked for a sample from NEDAP, also sent them a fixture, and we both did the product compatibility testing, and we were off to the races. And again, this is one of those projects where we kind of uncovered, some of that, because Westbrook in particular didn't really know that they had a big problem on their hands, because not many manufacturers are willing to just pick up any sort of control strategy and bolt it onto their fixture. They're worried about liability, they're worried about longevity and things like that. But because we do that compatibility testing, we can give it our sign-off signature and feel good about the solution we're putting in the field.
Awesome. All right, so our last story we're going to tell here is around the Avon School. So this is some really cool, fun information about this school. Al's going to go over. But this one is going to speak to the more of the service side. So when there is a hiccup along the way, or there's a timeline that changes, is your manufacturer going to be in your corner for you? And what does that look like? And so this was a case of one where we're going to highlight actually one of our team members, Brian, who's been with EverLast for some time, regional sales manager, and just some things we did a little bit different that was outside the box, that went the extra mile. And it really spoke to some of the culture that we have here.
So as I go through this story, I don't want any of you to get any crazy ideas that this is going to be something we're going to duplicate every time, but you'll know why I kind of preface this story here. So sometimes pain points are actually identified after the project was landed, and this was exactly that type of scenario. So we had identified, so this project was behind schedule. And there was a timeline that basically made it virtually impossible to meet the deadline outside of using maybe a temporary lighting solution for a non-temporary time frame. And what I mean by that is this facility was actually a hockey rink. So if any of you are familiar with Avon Old Farms, I would, if you're not, I would do a quick Google search on it. This is, you can tell by the image of the back screen there. This is a high school that is about $100,000 a year to go to school there. So as you can imagine, if these parents are paying almost $500,000 to send their kids to 4 years of high school, they're very particular about their facility. So we felt great that we were able to provide a solution for them, but we were kind of stuck in a time frame that wasn't really going to be able to allow us to do exactly what we wanted to do. There was a hockey ceremony that had been planned for this opening of this new rink, and it could not be rescheduled. The ice was being poured on a Sunday, and we had just received call on a Thursday that the fixtures needed to be delivered and installed by Sunday before the ice was being poured. So we really had a couple options. We could send temporary lighting into a brand new built facility that was literally world class in terms of high school hockey. So we could have sent them a temporary solution for a non-temporary time frame. We could have sent all of our fixtures air freight, and then it would have required all the fixtures to be assembled at the facility, and it would have cost thousands and probably tens of thousands of dollars to get the fixtures there. So in lieu of doing either one of those options, we actually sent one of our sales guys, Brian, and he drove across the country and hand delivered these units to save the job. And frankly, for me, that really just defines what it means to go the extra mile for our customer. And I preface this story by saying, don't get any crazy ideas, because I don't want anybody calling me saying that, hey, you guys delivered that one job on a day's notice. Well, Brian literally drove to Connecticut and drove back and met the guys there. As soon as they were open, he was actually in the parking lot waiting for them to open the door so he could hand deliver the stuff. They were very, very, very happy about us doing that, and they gave us a ton of credit for really stepping up and coming through for them. And at the end of the day, sometimes that's just what it takes.
Yeah, especially on situations like this where it's there's an external timeline that everybody sees this. There's timelines that a contractor will have, and if something goes haywire, vendors end up, getting stuck in some of the crossfire.
Well, this wasn't going to be a if we were going to air freight these fixtures, not only would it have cost thousands of dollars to do it, but it wouldn't have been a very simple fixture to install or put together on the customer's end. I mean, this had a full bird cage wire guard because it is a hockey facility, so they were preventing hockey pucks and things like that from hitting the acrylic or polycarbonate reflectors. It also had, I believe, either a 10 or a 20 watt emergency backup driver, just to ensure that, if the power were to go out in this facility, that they still had adequate lighting to get out of the building safely. So this was not a cookie cutter solution by any stretch, this was a solution that was very complex and that customer would have had a pretty difficult time putting together by themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we are about out of time. We have a few questions that we'll roll through here real quickly, but it's fitting that we ended on the schools because we have more content coming to you in the near future regarding schools. This is the time of year where projects are starting to go out for bid, and things are happening in a lot of different markets across the country as construction happens in the in the school or in the summertime. So we will have more of that coming. So you'll see a lot of content specifically focused around school. So Al, there's a question up there too. We can try to get through as many as we can here. I know we got about a minute or so left.
One I want to hit really quick is someone had asked the question, are you planning on offering a natatorium type high bay for pool areas, and also maybe combine that with some wall mounting options, it looks like. So as far as natatorium, so natatorium ratings are very interesting because they don't actually exist. Natatorium, for those of you who don't know, is just kind of another word for something that goes inside of a pool environment. So the main part that really causes a lot of stress for manufacturers, reps, or end users when it comes to natatorium is the chlorine content in the air. Now, all of you have probably been to some sort of indoor water park or indoor pool. The chlorine in the air actually is pretty minimal. And they have to have it that way because we all have to be able to breathe in there. And as long as we're using material, like in this particular instance, we might use an anodized cold forged heat sink to prevent any sort of rusting or anything like that. But what's nice about aluminum is that obviously aluminum just oxidizes and it doesn't actually rust and things like that. So we do have fixtures that can be used and have been used on many occasions for natatoriums. The wall mounting solution for high bays, I believe, is certainly something that we could do. And I believe that person's question, if you want to reach out to Justin Cook, he could be able to provide you with maybe a little bit more clarity or get some more specifications on exactly what you're looking for the wall mounting, whether that be a high bay or like a wall pack or flood type.
All right. The last question we got was, are you going to be at Light Fair? The answer is yes. We will definitely be at Light Fair. I don't have our booth number handy in front of me, but you can't miss us. We'll have our team there. There'll be 5 or 8 of us there. We can help answer more questions. We'd love to see you. We've got printed material and some things like that. So if you get a chance to stop by, yes, we will be there. We're excited to have the team there and excited to talk and show off some things that are happening here at EverLast.
We'll have some refreshments, not of the adult type, but of the energizing type for those of you that hit those low while we're all grinding it out there on the floor. So stop by if you want a little energy pick me up. Also, we'd love to show you around the booth. We have a ton of new fixtures this year, some of which I'll kind of spill the beans a little bit here, but one is of the grow type of fixture, which I know a lot of you have been asking about. So we have a really cool display highlighting our newest product that we're going to be launching this year, alongside some new burial and several other new fixtures. So
absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for your time today. Stay tuned. We have more webinars coming in the future, more content around schools. And again, if you're at Light Fair, we'd love to see you. Thank you so much and have a great rest of the day.